you could talk to them and interact with them. Our next session is on technology aspects of Metaverse and knowledge management startups. And to take this session, to moderate this session, you have only one person. He's passionate about KM and has been in this domain since the last 16 years as Chief Knowledge Officer at Wipro Technologies initially, followed by Montreal headquartered CGI, and now at Trans Digital Consulting. He has led large teams as practice head and vertical delivery head. He has been an active participant in every single CII Knowledge Summit since 2006, wearing multiple hats as organizer, speaker, panel moderator. He has been a speaker in many international forums and has won several global recognitions for his contributions to the field of knowledge management. He's playing a lead role in Knowledge Management Global Network, which is a network of KM networks around the world. He's an MBA from IIM Bangalore and a gold medalist computer engineer. In his spare time, he loves traveling to newer places and indulges in outdoor activities like bungee jumping, scuba diving, paragliding, parasailing, zip lining, and he sends us pictures to make us jealous. Please put your hands together for Mr. Ved Prakash, Chief Knowledge Officer, Trans, to take you through moderate the session on technology aspects of Metaverse and knowledge management. Over to you, Ved.
Thank you, Molly, for the introduction. May I ask Zeba and Derick, my co-panelists, to come over here? And I hope Namrata is there in the Metaverse.
Hi.
Yeah. Hi, Namrata. Are you able to see us?
Yes, I can, very clearly.
Oh, yeah, I can see you in the front as well. So thank you, Molly, again, for a very flattering introduction. And I'm really delighted to be participating in the CII Summit for the 16th consecutive year. So it's quite a pleasure to see, thank you, a lot of familiar faces, a lot of new faces that have come in, and very interesting to see the growing KM community around the world. So in the morning, I think Madan had spoken about KM Global Network, and this is a network that we are trying to expand as much as possible. It's because of the network that you saw Soha Radwan coming in as a speaker over here. And there are several members from around the world who are actually watching us participate in this summit in a virtual manner. Right. So coming to the panel topic, technology aspects of Metaverse and KM. So we've been listening right from the morning about what is Metaverse, how we are moving. It's really an evolutionary journey. We are moving from the internet to Metaverse, and things are changing drastically. So internet is all about 2D, about the websites, about e-commerce, etc., etc. What Metaverse does is it brings in an immersive experience around it. The human interaction element goes up manifold. Internet is more about looking at static pages and conducting some transactions. Social media also is not, while it's personal in some ways, it's very impersonal in other ways. But Metaverse is where you get the touch and feel aspect of it coming into picture. Right. With that, there are also complexities that come into being. So a previous speaker, for example, was talking about Epic Games and how the Unreal Engine can handle 15 million simultaneous players, how it is really creating 3D content in real time as people are playing games like Fortnite, right? So there is obviously a huge amount of technology that is powering that engine. Now, when we talk of the use cases of Metaverse, so for example, just 2 days back, Titan actually released its Rivaha collection, the Tanishq arm of Titan. That is a wedding jewelry collection in the Metaverse. So there is no physical launch that happened. It happened in the Metaverse. So as a consumer, you can walk into the Titan Tanishq store for Rivaha, try out the jewelry along with various accessories that you want to, and you can make a purchase over there itself and then go to a physical store and collect it. So that's the way the world is moving towards. Similarly, in enterprises also, a lot of many different applications of metaverse have been found, right? But now when we start looking at the metaverse itself and we try to deconstruct the technologies behind it, there's obviously the infrastructure layer. You need the cloud where a lot of content is residing, content of many different types. And I'll shortly come to the types of knowledge that are getting created in the metaverse. It's totally different, or it adds to the knowledge that we are familiar with in today's world. So in the infrastructure layer, you're looking at the networks, you're looking at 5G, you're looking at edge computing, etc., etc. You're also looking at the devices that are required to have that immersive experience in its totality. So one is, for example, the metaverse that has been set up for today's summit. It's in spatial platform, right? Where you can actually look at it in 2D, but you get a slight experience of walking into a conference room and choosing your seat and maybe doing a high five with some of the other fellow attendees in the metaverse, right? But in terms of the real metaverse, a lot more can happen over there, right? So besides spatial, there are a lot of other platforms that have come in. Meta, the ex-Facebook, right? That has its own horizon words. There is Roblox for gaming. There is, for example, Sandbox for real estate. Many different metaverses are getting created. There are lots of, coming back to the devices. So you have your VR, AR, XR kind of devices, which you wear on your heads and see through, and it augments what you're doing in the physical world with the virtual world, etc. You have sensors attached to devices in the manufacturing world or in the industrial world. Data from there is flowing into the metaverse, which is helping cross collaboration of a set of engineers, for example, in solving a problem. So there's that. Then there's the application layer. A lot of applications are being built on top of the metaverse. There are programming languages that have come up to code for the metaverse. Right? So there are, for example, things like Maya, etc., that have come in, 3ds Max that has come in, all that is there. Now, coming back to the question of what does knowledge mean in the era of metaverse? So we are used to document repositories, we are used to now audio and video kind of stuff. Suddenly we move into a realm of everything being in 3D. So you have your own digital avatar moving around in the metaverse in a 3D format. Whatever you are seeing is 3D. You should be able to feel the things, able to sense things. So haptic gloves have come in, for example. So you can actually press things and you can feel the sensation. The gaming consoles today already allow for that. Right? So a lot of technology imperatives have started coming in. And with that, I'll start introducing the panel because it is their thunder. They are the ones who are the real practitioners in creating these solutions. So I'll begin with Zeba. So Zeba is the founder and CEO of Zenvis Solutions, but that's not all. So she's an electrical engineering engineer by degree. She has worked in material science, has deep domain knowledge in electrical and electronics engineering, and especially the intersection with material science. But that's not all to her. She's an avid sports fan, plays tennis and squash left-handed, so don't mess around with her. Likes watching cricket, likes watching Formula One, football, etc. And she has a twin as well. So in the metaverse, we talk of having a digital twin. But in her case, it's a triplet that will be there in the metaverse. So I'll hand over the mic to Zeba to talk about Zenvis and the kind of solutions that she has structured for her clients. Thank you.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? Hi. Thank you, Ved, for that introduction. Thank you also to the CII for inviting me to be part of this panel. So yes, I do have a twin, so I know exactly what it feels like to have a digital twin. She's very real, but I can assure you, I think Gopi can vouch for that as well. To talk about the technological aspects of the metaverse, I think this is the first session where we're actually diving into the technical aspects of it. So I thought I'll start off by just, defining it. So what is the metaverse, right? So it's going to be the next generation of the internet. It's the new evolution of the internet as we know it to be today. It's going to completely redefine how we experience the internet. Instead of accessing it on, let's say, your mobile phone or your laptop, you will actually be immersed in it. So that's going to be the fundamental difference. And what you can really think of metaverse to be is you can, sort of imagine it to be sort of a simulated world, or, an immersive world, something that's persistent. So even whether, regardless of whether you're in it or not, it will continue to exist as a virtual reality. And it's a completely digital world where users can really come together, they can interact, they can transact. And what the platform does is it brings in technologies such as extended reality, AI, blockchain, immersive media, even social media, and even components of gaming concepts to really bring in a really immersive virtual experience for users. And you can actually interact and transact with people exactly as you would in the physical world. So it's essentially going to be the twin of this world if you want that to be. So people ask, all these technologies, AI, blockchain, they've been around for a while. So how is this different? XR has been there for a while. So how is the metaverse really different? And the answer really is that the metaverse really brings these technologies together, these core constituent technologies. It brings them together, and it wraps them with a layer of storytelling, and also that creative edge as well. So it's really immersive, and it actually has utility. So it solves real world problems as well. It brings people together. It helps people train. It helps people learn and experience new things. So it definitely has utility, and it's a very comprehensive and complex topic. So a lot of the use cases, so Ved asked me to touch upon some of the use cases. So essentially, training is something where we see huge adoption of these technologies. So essentially, AR and VR, and really growing into the metaverse as well, and it can be applied there as well. So what manufacturers and essentially anyone in business can do is that they can leverage the remote collaboration and also the immersive simulation capabilities of the metaverse, and they can provide a space where employees can train and learn, and really minimize errors, not have accidents. Also, someone was earlier mentioning, how do you train someone, if they have to walk on a skyscraper, so these kind of technologies can really come in and help people simulate these kind of trainings. They can help them practice their skills and do this along with their peers. They can completely gamify the whole experience as well. And all of this can be done in real time along with peer, collaboration, and it can be made competitive as well. Also, there are a lot of use cases in design and engineering. So designers can use the metaverse to, let's say, design products, systems, cities, and what you can do is you can actually run simulations in real time. And what that does is helps you identify flaws in your design, and then you can actually work on that. You can fine tune that, and you can perfect your design before you actually you know put it out there in the real world. So an example of that would be the autonomous vehicle, right? So let's say you have an autonomous vehicle, you want to test it, you want to road test it, but you don't want to endanger people. So you can actually design these technologies. You can completely simulate it with real-time traffic in the metaverse without risks of any accidents. And then, once it's done and perfected, you can actually put it out there on the road. So there are a lot of ways in which this technology can come and find real utility in the real world. Also, virtual offices. This is something that everyone now is very, familiar with. So with virtual offices, yes, it's become the norm now. People are coming in and working online, but you can't really discount the fact, and you can't discount sort of the impact of having a conversation with someone in the same space, right? And I think that's what the metaverse can really come in and do. It can allow you to be in the same space as someone and then actually interact with them, maybe see their expressions as well, because the metaverse also gives you an advantage of having something which is rendered in very, in a very hyper realistic way. So you can look at me exactly as the way I'm sitting now. I don't have to look like a cartoon. So that's another misconception out there. The metaverse doesn't have to, be cartoonish or comical. It can be extremely hyper realistic as well. So you can see my micro expressions as well when we're conversing in a virtual space. So, just to sum it all up, the metaverse is an evolving concept. What it is today, what we know it to be, can completely change tomorrow as well. But organizations and individuals have their own versions of it as well, because they'll apply it in different ways. But what is clear is that it is something that will allow people to experience the internet in the new way. It will also sort of connect people in a way that's never been done before. It will allow them to interact, transact, uh, you know, attend events together. Someone mentioned, going to a metaverse concert. So, you can have all these experiences in the metaverse, but I think the main focus to make sure that the metaverse concept lives on and it's not just a short-lived buzzword, and for it to be sustainable is for, creators like ourselves to focus on utility and purpose. When you really think of the user experience, the utility and the purpose of what you're building, that's when you really make sure that it's a sustainable technology. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Zeba. So, you talked about some of the digital currency aspects of it, and I was reminded of this Balle Balle land that Daler Mehendi has created, a metaverse of his own, where you can actually go and attend his Bhangra concerts. You can buy NFT assets related to, whatever he is doing. You can buy plots of land over there as well, and there are stores coming up on Balle Balle land. So it's evolutionary, but it's picking up because a lot of celebrities have started to invest into the metaverse. Right. So let's come to our second speaker, Namrata. Namrata is there over there remotely. She's sitting in Bombay. We must first thank her for making possible the metaverse version of this summit. She's the driving force behind it. So a round of applause for her, even before we begin. To introduce Namrata, she is the head of Metaverse and Digital in Sony Entertainment Ventures India. She's a digital entrepreneur, as she likes to call herself, and an angel investor too. So she has done investments in companies or created companies like gamified stock exchanges, etc. So amongst her other interests, she likes writing on digital trends and something very dear to her heart, something about the mental health, which she calls diabetes of the current generation, right? And the kind of addictions that metaverse may start seeing, just as current social media platforms are seeing, this is something that needs to be addressed at some stage. So, Namrata, over to you to talk about your perspectives on metaverse and the underlying technologies before we do a deep dive into different layers of technology. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ved. Thank you, CII. Zeba, that was a great summary of what the metaverse is. So I'll try to take on from there and not go back to what you just said. This has been great. I mean, of course, Ved has already mentioned that we've created a immersive space for the CII experience. Everybody should go and look at it. It'll be live tomorrow also. The idea of doing that is metaverse is something that you can't just talk about. It is something that you have to experience. It's like saying we used to have dial-ups and then we got high speed, but you won't know the difference unless you experience both, right? So for me right now, this is a 2D experience, which could be the dial-up, and the 3D experience could be the high speed in some sense. But having said that, I essentially come from Sony Entertainment Talent Ventures, which is coming from the realm of stories in the metaverse. So we are looking at the metaverse from the perspective of telling stories. And we think that this is maybe the best space to be able to do that because like Zeba said, I want to have an identity of myself, which is not like a cartoon. Great. She wants to be exactly like herself and the third twin in the metaverse. That's possible. So her identity is something that Zeba decides. It's not something that I decide by giving her a profile picture or a DP or whatever, right? That's one element. The second element is when she enters the space, whether it's a CII immersive space or it is any other world out there, she decides which part of the experience she wants to go to. So there are 50 things to go to. But she decides I'll go to the lobby or I'll go to the hotel or I'll go to the conference room, I'll go wherever. So that choice of experiencing something as a regular person with a screen is something we've not really had so far, right? We've just been looking at a screen. This is the first time where we are inside it. So that is the biggest shift. You're inside the so-called internet or the screen or whatever you want to call it. And that gives you a lot of freedom as a user and as a participant. So everybody now becomes a co-creator of the reality or virtual reality that we are creating for ourselves in the immersive space or this new portal called Metaverse. And any of us who've ever played games as kids or even now as adults, I mean, I'm sure everybody's playing all sorts of Minecraft and Fortnite and whatever. What is that? That is also a metaverse, right? You're just changing your reality. That's a story that you're being part of. That is something that takes your mind off your reality. And you come out of it happy and with the dopamine hit or whatever, with happy hormones. So the attempt is that if you're telling a metaverse story for the long haul, it is not just driven by the so-called buzzwords like NFTs and the Web3 just the tech play. So it's not just about the blockchains and the buzzwords. How does all of that come together to be of usefulness or utility, like Zeba said, for the user base? So, for example, if you're looking at the media ecosystem, how do we engage with the fans in such a way that they feel closer to the celebrities, or they feel closer to the movies they believe in, or they feel closer to the IPs that they like? For example, if you want to be closer to Spider-Man, how do I do that for you without you watching the film ever? And that's the challenge, and that's the beauty of what we might end up creating. And I like to say this, that we come from Sony PlayStation, which we maybe created the first metaverse of the world, and then we have Epic Games, which has Fortnite, where all these virtual concerts are happening. So it's a brilliant space to be part of. And the difference that we are bringing in is, whether it's a Sandbox or a Roblox and all these places that we mentioned, what we are struggling with, and I'm sure everybody who's in the space is facing the same thing, we don't have user interaction. We don't have enough users. Even the space that we might have created today, the people in the event are not necessarily in the metaverse part of the event, right? So there is a usage problem. People are not comfortable, they're not in it. So how do we bring you there? I think the one part of that story is going to come from bringing celebrities into the space. So if for example, you like Dhoni, who you can no longer see on a screen playing a live match, but you can see him play a virtual match in Sandbox, maybe I'll come to Sandbox, right? Or if you have Deepika Padukone giving you a beauty tutorial on Zepeto, I might just go and join Zepeto because I love Deepika and how she kind of styles herself. So those are the kind of use cases that we would want to kind of work with. Of course, the metaverse, the commerce side of the NFT commerce trading side of it is great. The crypto community, the crypto wallets tell you that that's an interesting money play. But engagement is the game, just like anything else. So if we can't create long-term engagement, if we can't tell stories, if we can't go back to, see, we are Indians, so we like perpetual stories. And Zeba mentioned that now we are creating perpetual worlds. So in these perpetual worlds, you can't just be having one event, right? So you've created one event space, but how do I now interact with this idea called Confederation of Indian Industries for the rest of my life? And that's the story that we'll end up telling in the metaverse, hopefully. And this is for the long haul. And in terms of where we see this going, we see the India in market being a lot more skilled. India being a hub for the metaverse technologies, for Web3, for blockchain, for Solidity, for the new tech stacks, for stories which are mytho-based. And all of this coming together hopefully will give us new experiences, hopefully will help us even with our mental health. And this now becomes a space that we want to be in and interact with and make this a part of our life. So you will not be spending 12 hours on Zoom. You will maybe spend 2 hours in an immersive environment having coffee and shopping and all of those other things, along with doing 6 hours of Zoom. So that's the hope. So let's hope that happens, and hopefully celebrities will be part of our lives, and we won't be just looking up to them, but they'll be our friends and we'll be having coffee with them. And that should be a fun world.
Thank you, Namrata. So she talked about how in future we may spend some time in the metaverse, and Gartner seems to actually corroborate that. They say that by 2026, more than 1/4 of the global population will spend 1 hour on an average daily in a metaverse. 2026 is not so far away, as we would have realized over the course of last 2 years, how they flew by. So thank you for that. And it's not a wonder that Namrata calls herself a metavasi.
I spend a lot of time in the metaverse. I'm a metavasi. I live here.
So we come to our third panelist, Derick. Now, Derick is the founder and CEO of a company called Flotora Decision Sciences and Analytics. So we'll see where data comes into the metaverse as well. Now, Derick, before that, was with Mindtree for 10 years as the head of knowledge services over there. So he has had a lot of overlap with what knowledge management really requires. Derick also has been taking sessions at Stanford School. Very impressive because it's a very, very reputed college around the world, being at Stanford. He's a fan of Pink Floyd and Ilayaraja. We are looking at more where his inspiration for creativity and design comes from. And it's a very varied list. That's why I'm using my phone to really look at my notes. He's a fan of Iranian Sufi poetry. I hope we have the time for him to recite some. He's into spiritual processes. the Buddhist monk Mindful Walking, and Shambhavi's Mahamudra Kriya, right? So would like to chat with him about some of these things. He likes the Japanese art of kintsugi. I had to look it up what kintsugi is all about, and it's about mending broken things, begins with pottery. But very interesting as a concept where you start to accept imperfections and start to find beauty in imperfections, which is what probably is required in today's world instead of finding fault. I think he has lots of inspiration coming his way for the industrial metaverse that he specializes in. So would you like to throw some light on Flutura as well as your experience with the industrial metaverse?
Thank you, Ved. So Flutura is an industrial AI company focusing on impacting outcomes in 3 verticals: energy sector, pharmaceutical sector, and the defense sector. So the best way to know us is probably I'll talk about an actual contract which we won. So Technip FMC is one of the largest manufacturers of subsea equipments in the world out of Houston. So we won a contract with them for 5 years. Essentially, they sell massive equipments to the Aramcos of the world, the ADNOCs of the world, the Shells of the world. And along with that, a piece of software goes, which essentially does diagnostics and prognostics of those equipments. So that comes from us. So the deal is very interesting for us. And one of the things out there is how it's basically telemedicine of equipments, right? So earlier, if you had to go and diagnose the health of an equipment, you had to touch and feel it. Now you can sit remotely and understand the digital twin and diagnose it. This is very interesting for us as a company because of 2 reasons. The first is if you wear the lens of a business model, metaverse-powered business model, there are metaverse-powered use cases which can impact the cost side of the equation, and there are metaverse-powered use cases which can impact the revenue side of the equation. As a startup, we found that most CEOs are interested if you are able to impact the revenue side of the equation. And this is one use case which will create new digital revenue streams. So for a company like Technip FMC, the average ticket size is $100 to $150 million. About $8 to $12 million can come out of these metaverse-powered business models around digital diagnostics and prognostics. That's very interesting for us because I mean, that generates revenue for them at the end of the day. So that's number one. The number 2 thing is, which is exciting for us, is if you look at this through the lens of what possibilities offers for India, we strongly believe that India is becoming the telemedicine for equipment capital of the world. So you have companies like Exact Space, ABB, Honeywell, all of them. So for example, we have Halliburton, which is monitoring the health of drilling operations in Russia today. Okay. And that's done out of Ring Road out here. Okay. And the next layer of user experience, we see Metaverse as an extension of an experience, is going to be Metaverse powered. So it's the troubleshooting of equipments, industrial equipments globally. It's not, Silicon Valley is not the capital, Dusseldorf is not the capital, Shanghai is not the capital, not Tokyo, not Seoul. It's going to be Bangalore, Coimbatore, Chennai, and this is powerful because I think we have a critical mass, what I call the ponytails as well as the gray hat. You know, you have the ponytail metaverse AI guys who love hacking new stuff, and you have a lot of gray hat people who have an intimate knowledge about, and a lot of tribal knowledge about the problem statements and what goes inside an equipment. And that's a unique mix you'll not find anywhere in the world. I mean, those 2 worlds collide out here. It's real world, not metaverse. Real world collides out here. So we're very excited about what the possibilities are. And I look at it through the lens of impact always. So one is you have economic impact of this. The second thing which I'm very, very excited about is the human impact of this technology. So I was looking at a use case, it's not directly involved in this, where the US Army had a huge problem statement. They had all these folks coming out of wars in Afghanistan and Iran suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And they become very violent people. They're not the same people who came back, right? So one of the things which has worked extremely well for them is to recreate. So for example, most of the time they might have seen IED device explode at close quarters, and very traumatic memories are formed in their heads. So one of the therapeutic processes they have worked on using AR, VR, Metaverse, all of this thing is to recreate in slow motion the explosion of that IED device And as they're reliving that experience, a very traumatic experience they're living through, the therapist actually will retell that story so that they are experiences. And in that process, and dramatic healing happens to the individual. I mean, this is a game changer for me. And I think there are a lot of nice, interesting use cases around the consumer side of things. But when you can heal a human being, that has a dramatic effect. And so I feel, so both from a business model perspective and a human-centric impact perspective, I think this can be a game changer. Yeah.
Thank you, Derick. So there is a rewiring of brain that can occur through the metaverse. Can be a frightening proposition as well, besides the therapeutic advantages that you talked about. Now, we are running out of time, but there are very important topics that we need to touch on. So probably we'll do more of a rapid fire thing, right? So what we want to really know about is how do you really create a metaverse when you go back to your own organizations? It's good to listen about these great success stories. So the first question, I'll start with you, Zeba. How does one get started in curating a metaverse environment?
That's a very complex question, and since we're running out of time, I'll have to keep it very short. So I think to actually understand how you build one, you need to understand what are the components of the metaverse. So I'll just quickly run through these 7 layers of the metaverse. People should also look this up. Typically, there are 7 layers of the metaverse. You have the experience layer all the way to the top, at the top. So this is, really defining the use cases, and these are the platforms that people will use, so the software platforms in order to experience it. Under that, you have a discovery layer. So that's going to be like a recommender system. It's going to be an exploration tool. So this could be, synonymous to, let's say, Google search or an app store, or even, maybe ads. And underneath that, you have, what the content creator economy. I think Madan was talking about that. The content creator economy is something that's becoming more and more relevant today. So people who are going to actually come in and build this content, what are the tools, the design tools that they're going to use? That's the next layer. Underneath that, you have the spatial computing. So these are the 3D rendering engines, everything to do with spatial computing, a little more complex. So this is more the back end, and content creation is more the front end. Underneath all that, of course, you have the decentralization layer, which is the NFT layer, blockchain. So the economies of the metaverse, right? Will you have a currency in the metaverse? How are you going to define it? What are the rules? Will you have an NFT, marketplace in your metaverse? So understanding that and trying to define and, defining whether that functionality should exist. Underneath that, of course, you have the human interface. So Ved was mentioning AR, VR headsets, or maybe even going forward, haptic gloves, haptic full body suits, maybe even neural link, where you can just with your mind, you can, sort of control where you want to go in the metaverse. So, so that's the human interface layer. And last but not the least, and that's more relevant to us today, is the infrastructure. That's something that has a lot of catching up to do. So that would be, the cloud computing layer. So the cloud layer, the cloud infrastructure, everything to do with, let's say 4G, 5G, 6G coming up as well. And then of course the GPUs as well. So if you understand these, you know exactly what you need to work on, and how to actually create this metaverse.
Easy, isn't it? Just the 7 layers.
Very quickly. I'm so sorry.
So the next question, Derick, to you. Metaverse project. Shed a light on some of those. Okay. The new emerging skills, in fact.
No. So I focus on 2 aspects which most people miss, which is, I think the tech side is well understood for most people, but I would say from a practitioner, but we sell to the industrial crowd. Most of them relate this to gaming. They think their children play with this. So in order to convince them, the first question we need to answer while selling this to the business is the juice worth the squeeze? What is the economic value, right? So we have to create an ROI model around the metaverse. So that is a fundamental artifact because most of the decision makers are late 40s, 50s, probably 60s, right? So they can't feel metaverse, but they can feel money. So that's the artifact we normally create, the first one. The second is, I would say, is to make this concept come alive, the before and after user journeys. So today, if you have a troubleshooting experience, which is touching the equipment, you should be able to show the target user journey, which is metaverse powered, so that they'll be able to experience the delta before and after part of it. So the ROI and the before and after use cases would be the starting building blocks for building this.
Okay. And what about the new roles that are emerging in the metaverse economy?
Okay, so one of the projects we are executing is for a car manufacturer. They're trying to get field experience value into the metaverse environment. So it's a cross-functional team. It consists of instrumentation guys, the IoT sensor guys, who will put the sensor fabric around an electromechanical thing. You have the AI guys who essentially make sense out of it. Then the experience layer will have the metaverse folks. And then you also have a traditional user experience kind of a person. And the last but not the least is an electromechanical guy who understands this. So 5 different skill sets converge to impact an operational problem. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll move to Namrata. So what are some of the landmines to be aware of while executing metaverse projects? You did one in the last 2 days for the summit. So what
it's
kind
the knowledge gap. The biggest landmine is the knowledge gap between the people who are thinking this, who are creating this, and who are experiencing this. The last 2 days, I think, have been a testament to that, right? I mean, while we could create it really quickly, the usage took some time. And this is something that I think all of us are facing. Like Derick just said, the decision makers are a certain age group. In his case, they're young. In my case, they're 60 plus. So you're dealing with the decision makers who are a certain age who want to do this, but they only understand the economic value and not necessarily the experience, immersive human value or the interaction value of the whole thing. The creators are very young people at this point. They come from the field of animation, from Web3, from blockchain, all of that. For example, we work with a company called Question What's Real, which is a really young team of 12 really cool people sitting out of Pune and creating experiences for the world and for NASA and those kind of companies. And then we have us who can tell the stories, but maybe we don't know how to tell non-linear stories, or maybe we don't know how to tell stories for perpetuity. And these are skill gaps, these are knowledge gaps. And that is the biggest minefield that I think all of us in the industry are right now dealing with, because the level of understanding at all levels is different. So bringing all of the people together becomes a little bit of a challenge, but once they come together, the magic they end up creating, I think, is worth it. And that's the impact that all of us are seeking in a decentralized open world where all of us can tell stories and find people who want to hear those stories, be part of our experiences, be part of our lives. So next time, I don't want to just hear you tell me that, Derick likes a certain modality, or he likes the Buddhism, or I want to be in that experience with him. And I want to experience that meditation with him. And when that happens, and then hopefully this gap disappears and becomes normal for all of us.
Yeah, and with technology, things can go wrong. So those who are following IPL would know about the new team, Gujarat Titans. They decided to unveil their logo in Spatial, the same metaverse platform we are using for the summit. Went wrong. Then they have a dugout over there where you can interact with the players and other things. It's not functioning the way it was expected to. So one needs to be really, be aware of some of these pitfalls that can happen, that Namrata also talked about. How much does it cost to build a metaverse? Very quickly, if you have to put a number for a simple use case, for example, for a learning in a typical corporate about behavioral skills, how much would it cost?
Again, there's no exact answer to that. It depends on the use case. It's very different, the kind of experience that you want, whether you want to gamify it, you want to add an NFT layer to it. It's really subjective to the use case. So
no NFT, no gamification, plain simple. No, that's because if we want to budget for it, we need to know, put down a number.
If you use existing platforms, if it's something even as simple as, virtual offices, you can use free services, you can even pay
free.
Even up to, that's what people like to hear. So yeah, it range anywhere from a free service to, tens of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So that's the range. For something.
I want to know who's doing it for free. Who's doing it for free? Please tell me.
So we have the answer. We are hedging between $1 million to 0, right? I'll go with the 0 for now. Okay. So let's wrap up this panel, but I'll have a quick fire. If you want to give one piece of advice to organizations embarking on their metaverse journey, what would it be? We'll start with Namrata, since you are the metavasi.
Very simple. You have to be able to see through the PR from the reality. So while you might be reading all of these articles, and metaverse as a word is right now in news every day, multiple times a day, a lot of the stuff that is being said is not real. And that's not bad per se. We are talking about virtual reality, but I think a lot of brands are getting carried away by the short-term play. The NFT play in India is turning out to be a non-community-led short-term play too. And it's really not the NFT play; it's the token play, which is a large play. When you're looking at experiences, the experiences can be open world, closed world. So what should you go with? What is your long-term strategy? Are you an old brand like Tata? Are you a new brand which is a D2C brand? Are you an IPL team which requires fan engagement, etc.? All of these things require deeper answers. They can't be as simple as, oh, metaverse is a new thing, let me create something for it. So I think that's the biggest thing business decision makers have to kind of be mindful of, and not just get carried away just because this is the newest thing on the block in marketing.
Sure, Namrata. Derick, very quickly, 10, 15 seconds.
Show me the money. Business case, business case, business case.
Great.
Focus on utility and purpose.
Okay, focus on utility and purpose. So thank you so much, Zeba, Derick, and Namrata. And thank you all of you for patiently listening to the technology aspects of Metaverse. And I'd like to now hand it back over to Molly for the next panel. Thank you.